speed farming tier 100 dungeons with a Necromancer. Recent buffs to the Barberheart, or let's say fixes to the Barberheart, especially when you're using Bone Storm together with the aspect that gives you a shield as you're using Bone Storm, makes your Necromancer super sturdy, dash out insane damages, make 5 Bone Storms in total, and just completely zoom through dungeons. The fastest I've done so far was a Hoarfrost Demise in 3 minutes and 30, but I'm trying to get it sub 3 minutes for the YOLOs. Now let me shine some light on the build. In the background, you're going to have some tier 100 dungeon zooming happening as we're going to go through everything. The build is quite amazing. It uses a combination of Shadow Blight super crits together with massive damage over time that will then stack up each other together into the Barberheart with a Bone Storm on the Lidless Wall, which makes even more Bone Storms to completely overload all your opponents. In total, you could have up to 5 Bone Storms going on as you zoom through the dungeon. The interesting part is now Bone Storm plus the aspect of the Shielding Storm gives you Barrier. It finally works, and I found myself a new Barberheart that has 3 seconds. The intriguing part about the 3 seconds is monsters die slower, but therefore as you're zooming through the dungeon, it's 21, 23, 24, 3 seconds. Your Shielding Storm also holds longer, because if they already explode after 2 seconds and you're to the next mobs, sometimes your shield just weirdly runs out. But with a Barberheart at 3 seconds, things are actually looking quite perfect. And due to the bonus use of Blight, you have another source of immense crits, because damage over time can't crit. It can do insane damage though, can't crit. And therefore with a Blight, which on initial hit can crit, and you're getting like 200, 300, 400, 500,000 Blight crits, you have another source of immense damage that you can spam in between, especially if you're in these single target situations. The full skill tree will be in the description below as the Paragon board, but I'll give you the key parts here for you to understand why do we make which decision. Also, aspects and itemization, very important. The gameplay loop is all about tempo. You're gonna trigger your Bone Storm, then you can throw the Blights to make bonus Bone Storms. Back there, one is already triggering. You can just Blood Mist in, and then you leave them while their Bone Storms is running, and you make more. So now here, Bone Storms, we can Iron Maiden, we have more Bone Storms. We go on. Iron Maiden gives you Essence in this case. Very interesting. And then Blight again to make more Bone Storms. Iron Maiden to get Essence back. Pull them all together, and you keep zooming. And this is how you play dungeons. You never stop. You always go from the one mob to the other. And you know what? Worst case scenario, on your way back, you can tap what you want to have. And technically, as long as Bone Storms are running somewhere on the map, you never want to actually take your Bone Storm cooldown. Because as soon as you take your Bone Storm cooldown, then your actual damage can't make Bone Storms around you anymore, because you have a Bone Storm around you. But you don't want that. You want to be able to like straight up just see, there's another one, make the Bone Storms with a Blood Mist. Because if you can just Blood Mist in to make Bone Storms, that's perfect. Like here, straight up, and the first one already triggers again, and then the corpse tunnels go off. And yes, I've been zooming the whole time now with Bone Storms active, and that's how you go through dungeons. Just massive tempo plays, and you never stop. And then last but not least, you know, you can just look back to, oh, did I miss any useful items? I mean, all the legendaries are anyways going in. All the other stuff you can quickly pick up. And yes, your Bone Storm just does massive damage. I mean, I don't actually have to do anything else. My Bone Storm is already responsible for millions of damage. For the skills, very important, why blind? Again, it is single target damage plus damage over time, but the initial hit of 4,000 to 5,000 can crit. And that with your 120% increase and your 300 to 400% critical strike damage and all the other multipliers goes quite high. Plus Blight slows, CC, and it does 15% multiplicative damage increase for you on everything. So as you're shooting Blight on an opponent, then Barberhearting, then critting, all your crits and everything, 15% increase. Kind of fun. That's with 9 points in Corpse Explosion, and yes, you have pans to put even more into Corpse Explosion, and my amulet is rocking Fueled by Death for another 3 points. I do have to say though, I prefer amplified damage because that's a natural 12% instead of 9%, and that goes up to 24 in total. Or I want points in gloom because gloom stacks up and does so much more damage. And yes, we are playing Iron Maiden together with Decrepify, and the Iron Maiden is actually on Abhorrent Iron Maiden for heal 7% of your maximum life when an enemy dies. That, as you're zooming through the dungeon, is quite intriguing to continuously keep you topped up and never have you in a situation of dying, especially when cascading waves of damage are blasting through your opponents. Then very important is standalone Memento Mori together with a Bone Storm, Supreme Bone Storm, and last but not least, the Shadow Blight itself, which we managed to stack up to 4,000 damage. And yes, your Shadow Blight key passive can crit with 500,000. I haven't seen a million crit yet from Shadow Blight, but like 300 to 500,000 is quite happening often. For the glyphs, I've been going a little bit experimental. We are taking the control as always. Then we first go straight up into the Scent of Death board with the Imbiber for damage while healthy because that's its own multiplier. And very important here, as you're going through, you might see I have 675 willpower. I'm trying to take every single path that's going through willpower. So as much willpower as possible. If I can choose between Dex, Int, or willpower, always choose willpower. Next up is the Darkness Glyph for more shadow damage, and we're actually taking Wither. And yes, with 675 willpower. The Wither bonus, again, it is 40. Okay, for every 40 willpower, 1% more and 4% damage more. And we're at 650. That's already 15% increase, so up to 20%, and another 60% bonus damage, so 110% bonus damage multiplicative on top on my shadow damage over time. Now we also need to take Flesh Eater for the 40% increase, and here for the critical strike, because again, Shadow Blight key passive can critical strike, Blight can critical strike, and then with a 22% multiplicative increase into the Barberheart, absolutely beautiful. And last but not least, we're going down here into the Bloodbath board. Yes, that seems a little bit weird, and there is a damage while fortified node. We're not really fortified, but what was about picking up the Exploit Glyph for the bonus damage versus vulnerable, and dealing damage to vulnerable enemies increases your damage another 10% multiplicative. And with the final points I'd left, I could go for another Glyph socket, but I went for 8% max life bonus together with another 2, and a 2%. We could have also gone here for the Glyph socket and maybe get a Sacrificial in for 10% bonus increase while you have no active minions. There is still a possibility to change the Paragon board slightly. Now, we do have the Litless Wall, and that is a 25% roll, which gives us a 100% lucky hit chance to always get this off. That's in total, with the triple sacrifice, you can get 5 Bone Storms all in all. And the most important part is, as we said before, that the Bone Storm stays for 10 seconds and every consecutive Bone Storm stays for 10 seconds. So you want the Bone Storm to run out on yourself that you can then keep Bone Storming. That gets followed up by Bone Storm is now Darkness. We have 40% damage increase on Decrepify and Iron Maiden, together with a Sacrilegious Heart for the bonus corpse explosions, together with a Brutal Heart for the Decrepify aura, and together with a 3.6 second Barber Heart currently on an absolute max roll with the crits with a 60% multiplicative bonus critical strike damage and a 30% chance. And we already have a 380% crit damage and 40% crit strike chance. You notice we crit strike a lot. Then very important, 120% Shadow Blight passive increase. And yes, you could change this one over to what we have on the amulet, because that would make 180% total damage increase, which is also nice. And then it's only 40% multiplicative on the crits. That's viable. We're using the Penitent Griefs, and why? Because first and foremost, it is crowd control, but most important, it's just another 10% multiplicative damage increase, because enemies that are chilled, you do more damage to. And as we're zooming through everyone continuously with the bonus movement speed and everything, that adds quite nicely up. Plus, on the pens, we have Bone Storm making barrier, and very important here is +4 in Corpse Explosion. It wouldn't hurt instead of willpower to have +4 in Blood Mist as well. Maximum life you really want, and well, I do actually want to have double damage reduction, but I didn't get that. On our gloves, we have critical strike chance, all stats, 4 ranks to Sever, and these are my old Sever gloves. And instead, I want to have 4 ranks to Blight here. That would be fantastic, but maximum crit essentially. And then the Shadow Blight key passive deals damage to enemies, increase the next Shadow Blight's damage within 10 seconds by 25%. That can go up to 45% for 225% in total Shadow Blight key passive bonus damage. And you've noticed it was 4,000 damage times 225% times 120% times another, that's 60% on my 380% multiplicative on top, 500% critical strike damage. What the fuck? On the chest, we're having Black Mist, triggers Corpse Explosion, very important. Damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow damage over time is one of the coolest ones. Then max life, total armor, and another darkness skill damage doesn't hurt. On the helmet, we're going to go for disobedience for the bonus armor. Also here, total armor, all stats, maximum life intelligence. All stats is always good. Willpower is always good. This is my old amulet. It has essentially a good barber heart in it. It has fueled by death. It's shadow damage over time plus, and then again, damage reduction from enemies that are affected by shadow damage over time. On my weapon, I'm going for vulnerable, critical strike damage, int, and as always, all stats to boost my willpower even further. Total, I'm getting 233 willpower plus on items, and that is super useful. Ladies and gentlemen, speed farming dungeons has never been easier. I hope you're going to be enjoying the Tempest Necromancer, and don't worry, I will make an Infinimist version that does not need a single legendary and has the option between Creeping Death and the Barber Heart as well. Stay tuned for that in the next coming days. Until then, how about Bloodlands, which will also rework into only crit, no overpower Bloodlands? What the? Yeah.